Okay, so we know people are a little bit nervous about the offensive line, as they should be. A lot of unprovens, a lot of unknowns. One of the more interesting things to come out of, let me get this out of there, out of OTAs, and maybe one of the more surprising things was that Jake Andrews, who the Texans had picked up in the offseason, was getting most of the reps with the ones at center, despite only having been with the team for a little while, despite only having about 71 or 72 snaps in NFL games, none last year with the Patriots. He was out there, and I think a lot of people, maybe myself included, jumped to the conclusion that Jake Andrews was, looks like he's going to be the starter. There's a little bit more to it than that. I think when you have a new deep offensive coordinator in Nick Caley and a new offensive line coach in Cole Popovich, or at least he's now the full-time offensive line coach, the prior experience with that Patriots offense and I think with Cole Popovich mattered. Here is Jake Andrews talking about just that when he was on Texans radio earlier this week. Whoa, wait.
I'd been trying since I was knee-high to a cricket, trying to play center.
I meant to play that later. Okay, he's very likable. If you want to talk to a dude who's hanging out the side of his pickup truck in Alabama, that's Jake Andrews. But here's Jake Andrews talking about his familiarity with the system.
For me, it's easier because I ran this system, exact system, different verbiage in college, my senior year. Sure. My rookie year when I was in New England, I ran the same thing with Bill O'Brien.
Yep.
And so for me, it's been pretty easy because I can communicate with guys who are seeing this stuff for the first time.
Right.
And, it's easy for me to say, hey, well, we used to do it this way. And I know what Cole wants, Popovich. I know what he wants. I know what he wants stuff to look like. And so maybe we didn't get to it in a meeting. Maybe we didn't get to talk about it during the walkthrough. But when we get out there and I'm talking to guys about stuff in the locker room, I can let them know, like, hey, let's try this differently.
Yeah.
Hey, he wants this to look like that when you've got, X, Y, Z out there in front of you.
So it's kind of strange because he's a guy that doesn't have a lot of NFL playing experience. I'm going to show a couple clips of him here from a couple of years ago. But Jarrett Patterson and Juice Scruggs have more experience as starters and more total snaps than them. But Jake Andrews has familiarity with the system. So during OTAs, I don't read anything into that. Nick Caserio had also mentioned to Sean Pendergast and I that, hey, that might have been how it looked when we were out there and the media was able to watch. They had sessions that the media wasn't able to watch, and that maybe Jake Andrews wasn't starting all the time there. I think it's a three-man race at least between Jake Andrews and those two veteran players. And then you also have Eli Cox as promising upside, very athletic as a center. So I don't want to call it a four-man race until we start to see some more of Eli Cox. But I think it's wide open right now. If we watch him, and I'm going to watch the first time he got substantial playing time on offense was 2 years ago, week 17, I think it was. And he did some good stuff. And I think some stuff that measured up to the scouting report. Here's Jake Andrews versus the And I realized that my mic was muted. As I learned this new software, it's going pretty well, except for my mic being muted during a lot of that stuff. Wide base, as rookies tend to do, he got a little bit out over himself in terms of balance a couple times, but he's got a taste for the physicality. There's a lot to like about him. If you want to think about various guys from the past that he might compare to, I went to Mock Draftable, and if you look at his athletic profile, nothing sparkling there, nothing great 40-yard dash, but everything else he's about average. You look at the guys that comps to, and Greg Mance was the guy that stuck out. Of all those guys, Greg Mance was the guy who had the longest career in the NFL, somewhere between 6 to 8 seasons, good amount of time, of course, with the Houston Texans. If you guys don't remember Greg Mance, there he is. wearing a Bills uniform there. If he works out to be a Greg Mance, but can start for a year or two, or gives you some level there, that would be an upside. I'm open to the possibilities here. Yeah, I'm with you, retired row. It is hard to keep. That protection looks solid, right? Why did New England let him walk if New England has O-line issues of their own? It's very limited. And there are some bad plays that I didn't put in there because it was his first snaps in the NFL as an offensive lineman. And then week 18, they were playing, I think it was the Jets, and it was snowy the whole time. I didn't think it was really accurate. Yeah, and I'll get to one of the clips about him being a wrestler because he wasn't, even though he was a heavyweight, he did also have to suck weight at times, which is a sign of toughness in my mind. This is Jake Andrews on what he thinks the system will look like. You're going to like this. I would like it more if it came from a guy who had more pelts on the wall as an NFL offensive lineman, but there's a couple phrases in here that sound very D'Amico Ryans swarmy, and I like that.
Jake, what can you share with us about the system? What's going to be run here in this offense without giving away too many secrets to the enemy?
No secrets. The ball is going to be run. I tell you that much. We're going to run the football. Kaylee's doing a good job with putting all that stuff together. We're going to protect CJ or whoever's back there. Try to make it us five up front. We're going to try to make it our life's work to not have anybody in his lap or touching him at all. We're going to pound the rock and we're going to air it out. We're going to keep people on their toes, and we're going to play tough physical football. And people are going to know when they wake up on Monday morning that they just got done playing the Houston Texans.
So most of you guys remember that from D'Amico in that pep rally a couple years ago. He wants teams to know that they played the Texans when they wake up on Monday morning. I think with the defense, you 100% know that. I mean, Trevor Lawrence had to check to see if his head was still attached after he played the Houston Texans on that Monday. That's there. That's signed, stamped, sealed, and delivered in terms of the way the defense plays. Offensively, again, it's Jake Andrews, so him saying that it doesn't carry as much weight as if some other more proven offensive lineman did. But if you want to think about the way they're trying to remold the offensive line, this is not an indictment on Laramie Tunsil, but Laramie Tunsil is a very, very, very good finesse football player. I think a lot of guys wake up on Monday morning after having played Laramie Tunsil, and their egos might be bruised because they didn't get any pressures, they didn't get any QB hits, they didn't get any sacks in a game. But his style of play isn't one that is raw and brutish and physical. He's a master technician. But his martial art, if he had to choose one, would be more judo, or something like that. Something a little bit more elegant. Whereas you want kung fu fighters, you want mixed martial arts, you want former wrestlers, which is Jake Andrews, as one of you alluded, was. I always love hearing about guys who are wrestlers because I was a high school wrestler. I thought it made a huge difference in my athletic career. For somebody who wasn't all that athletic, my wrestling background helped me a lot, and for a lot of the same reasons that Jake Andrews is about to cite right here.
How important was wrestling to you, and how did that kind of help you in your football career?
Very important to me, not only for football, but just as a individual with the mental capacity of it. Yep. I mean, if you can wrestle one-on-one for 6 minutes straight versus anybody, you got to have a little something to you. And so you develop that, and then obviously the technical things that help you with football, like leverage, hand position, balance, good feet, being able to do stuff like that. Obviously transition as well, especially to the interior of offensive line play. And it's been really important. And I'm glad I do it. I would advocate for everybody to at least try to wrestle if you're a football player, no matter what position you play, because, like I said, it's going to help you either mentally or physically, hopefully both.
And, I think sometimes people forget that wrestling and boxing they are martial arts. That it's a combat sport, but because those are more mainstream, we don't think of them that way. But the guy that I played with who was awesome as an offensive lineman was Leon Searcy, who was an offensive tackle, and he had a boxing background. And his punch, makes sense. His punch was lethal. His punch was lethal. Guys hated getting caught with his punch. And it was almost like getting punched in the face by a heavyweight when you got punched in the chest by Leon Searcy. On the interior offensive line, the leverage the body positioning, all of those things, and then especially the hand fighting. And as you saw in those clips, he's got good hands. By rookie standards, those are really good hands. You just spend so much time. It's called pummeling when you don't have to go full speed in wrestling, and you just kind of work for inside hand control of your opponent. You just spend a lot of time doing that as a kid, and it ends up paying dividends in that same hand fighting that goes on in the interior. One of you made a good point about, or I had a question. I think I put this up, but I didn't say the actual New England part. The protection looks solid. Why did New England let him walk if New England has O-line issues of their own? So Jake Andrews' background is he was at Troy. He wasn't a center. He wanted to play center. You heard in that clip that he wanted to play center. So he ends up playing center his senior year when Cole Popovich was there as the offensive line coach for 1 year. Then he goes to New England, plays for Bill O'Brien, and then there's a coaching change. And I think in some respects, well, let's see, he was drafted in 23. Yeah, coaching change, new coach comes in, coaching change again, and that sometimes guys just get lost in the wash. When you have an athletic profile that isn't all that scintillating or glamorous, it might have just been a numbers crunch and they wanted to go with some of their younger guys or their draft picks. So I don't worry too much about that when you're talking about guys who kind of profile like journeyman offensive linemen. They need to be able to fit in to, let's say, Wade Smith. Think about Wade Smith. Wade Smith was with multiple teams before he got to the Texans, but then once he was on a well-coached offensive line with a good offensive coordinator running a system that was good for him, it just kind of clicked for him. Wade Smith ends up going to the Pro Bowl. So I'm always very, very open to guys that have work ethics, guys that have the gritty attitude, guys like Wade Smith, that you can get the very best version of them when they find themselves in the right environment. And I'm not forecasting greatness for him or anything. I just think it's an interesting element or addition to the mix there between Juice Scruggs, Jarrett Patterson, Eli Cox, and then Jake Andrews. Let's see. Yeah, sorry about the audio earlier. He was a heavyweight wrestler. I don't have the clip of him cutting weight. I apologize for teasing that earlier. And I thought he looked decent in the clips that I showed, and there's plenty to build on there. That was his first playing time ever as an offensive lineman. He's only got 71 snaps in the NFL. Sounds like Cole Popovich has the tone set also. Very, very important. This should be labeled not suitable for work because I love everything he said. Yes. The attitude, I think, hopefully is going to be a whole lot different. Thank you. Thanks, Evan. I appreciate it. I like doing a lot of my own stuff. I have to do it in like 20-minute doses. Super pumped for this year. Haven't felt this way about our offense or defense in a long time. The defense is the interest. I know, Judo. Just leave me alone, man. It's been a long week. Jewish MMA. Jewish MMA is Krav Maga. That's what the Israelis use. You go to a Krav Maga studio and they do some pretty badass stuff. Okay, were there any indicators that make you think the players are talented enough or just schematic and coaching issues? I've said Jayun, if I'm pronouncing your name right. I'll say this about any offensive line ever that's underperforming. Typically, they could be a lot better with the guys they have on the offensive line right now. That a lot of times with the offensive line, it's such a group effort, and the cohesion and the coaching is so important that a lot of times you end up on a bad offensive line, you see the worst version of a guy. So the offensive line that I saw last year, I saw multiple guys playing like the worst version of themselves. And the one big telling thing for me always is, are smart people making dumb mistakes? Because if it looks like a dumb mistake, then it's probably something more in the communication or the coaching or the teaching or the game plan. Because when both Laramie Tunsil and Daria Gumbawale, for instance, are blocking the same guy while an edge rusher rushes free, without knowing the specifics of exactly what their protection rules are that week, a smart guy made a dumb mistake on that play, or the communication wasn't right. And these are all the things that you hope that a combination of better coaching and then also perhaps with CJ being involved, you don't have those gaps in communication when CJ can double check everything. I played a clip from Tom Brady a few weeks ago where he made about 29 adjustments before the snap. And the really cool thing to watch with Brady was he's he's repeating things. He's checking. He's making a couple of adjustments. Then he's going back and resetting and reasserting the mic call and making sure everybody's on the same page. The Texans never had a single chance to do that last year because the way their operation was, man, let's hope we get up to the offensive line with at least 5 seconds so we can get this snap off on time. CJ was so uninvolved in that aspect of the game that it creates a lot of conflict. When you had a young center making the calls, it makes it that much more difficult. When you've got the center making a lot of pass protection calls instead of the quarterback, there's going to be gaps in the communication. So as long as CJ learns it and pulls it off, hopefully you just don't have those simple glaring communication errors. The other part about CJ and his development in this system that I'm excited about is we've heard multiple different players this offseason talk about how good Nick Caley is at teaching everything and making it easy to grasp. And it's interesting because when Bill O'Brien came in, he was doing a lot of the same things that Nick Caley's doing. By all the reports and what we can see, it's going to be a lot of New England elements to this, or Bill O'Brien, Tom O'Brady, Josh McDaniels elements to this. That I don't recall hearing that, and I kind of recall hearing the exact opposite. Like, oh man, this is so complicated. Oh, there's so much to learn. So the skill of a really good teacher in football terms, or a really good coach, is making the simple look complex, the illusion of complexity. And to the players themselves, teaching it in bite-sized chunks to where they understand everything. And so far, it sounds good. We won't know for sure until we see it on the field, but that part of it I've been encouraged by with Nick Caley. I think Caley probably getting Nick Caley having seen the Belichick way to do it, but then also seeing the Sean McVay way to do it. I love that. And again, it doesn't mean anything until he shows it as an offensive coordinator. But too many times, guys that get raised up in the New England system, they get out into the real world and they don't understand how hard it is to do some things when Tom Brady isn't your quarterback, or when Bill Belichick isn't your defensive coordinator. So I like that Caley has worked under a couple of some really good and smart coaches, but he's also seen that it can be done multiple different ways. Bill O'Brien's one of the most successful guys to come out of New England as a head coach, and I think part of that has to do with the fact that he'd been a bunch of places. He had different mentors before he got to New England, so he's able to find his way and figure out who he was. All right, I'm going to have to cut it short. You guys have a lot of great comments here. And so you can pick the best of two different systems. Yeah, and kind of like everybody, everything's a hybrid system at some point. Guys are going to make it their own, and there's going to be similarities, but the Nick Caley system hopefully is what people are talking about in a few years. Thanks for bearing with me as I learn this new platform, but I'm very happy with it so far. It's going to be a lot easier, and you're going to have far fewer stupid moments with me. If you can, please like, subscribe, all that other stuff. I read Bill Belichick's book. I'm going to do a review at some point.